Hi guys, Geekonomics here, and today I'm going to bring you a brief revision video for tradable pollution permits. This applies to those of you who are doing the Markets in Action resit paper on 16th of May, so next Monday, and those of you who are doing the new A-level specification, and you'll be doing the microeconomics paper also on Monday. So I'm going to look particularly at tradable pollution permits simply because I have a hunch, although I don't know and I haven't seen the paper, I have no knowledge of this at all, but it's a potential essay question, I think, or certainly an extended answer question for those of you doing the F581 resit paper, given what's been on the papers in the past. And really I've just slotted this phrase, tradable pollution permits, into this question, and if you look on the previous papers you'll find that the rest of this question, the wording of it stays the same from one exam session to the next. It's really only the policy that changed. So it goes from maybe green taxes to subsidies, and then maybe this year it'll be tradable pollution permits. Who knows? We don't know, but let's just have a look at it in case it does arise this year. So, discuss whether tradable pollution permits are the most effective policy measure to correct the market failure arising from negative externalities of production. Those of you doing F581, that's 18 marks. If you're on the new specification and it does come up as an essay, then this would be a 20-mark question. So how would we go about tackling this one? Well, as ever, level 1 is our basic knowledge and understanding. So we really just get the bare necessities down at level 1. How do we do that? We look at the question, pull out the key terms, and then generally speaking it's just a question of defining them. So define market failure, define negative externality. So in both of those then we're looking for something along the lines of the fact that market failure means that demand and supply fails to produce an allocation of resources which is socially desirable and socially optimal. Negative externalities, of course, are associated with production externalities. So there are third-party costs. So get in the phrase third-party cost. There are negative spillover effects. And of course, given that we're talking about a production externality, generally speaking, we're talking about pollution. And then thirdly, what's meant by this whole notion of a tradable pollution permit? So just give a brief idea here with regard to what you're talking about, the fact that permits are allocated and issued to firms, giving them a right to pollute up to a certain level. Above and beyond that, they will need to acquire some more pollution permits, or alternatively, above and beyond that, if they want to keep producing, they need to find alternative methods of production which are cleaner. Level 2. So as you know, level 2 is application. So let's now apply this. So that when we're talking application, we're now saying, okay, so let's just think a little bit more about the practicalities of this and how this would actually work in the real world. So again, you may wish to consider this whole negative externality issue once again in brief. So the fact that firms, when they're producing, they're only considering their private costs. They do not consider the external and social costs, and as a consequence, when we're talking about negative externalities, we tend to get overproduction. Explain the operation of the pollution permit scheme. So as we've said, these permits are issued to firms up to a certain level, and so we've got, for example, the European emissions trading scheme is a great example of this. The European Union emissions trading scheme. If you Google it, you'll no doubt find out about it. Indeed, I think it mentions it in the old AS textbook. If firms wish to pollute even further, they either become a little bit cleaner, or they need to buy permits from other firms who have not used up their allocation. And so this is very much a market-based solution. It combines regulation with a market-based solution to this problem. Market-based in the sense that there's a price being there's a price being allocated to something for which there previously was no price, i.e. fresh air. And then secondly, there's a regulatory factor to this, because over the course of time, international trade agreements will result in the number of these permits being issued, the numbers will decline over time, and so that will have an impact on overall supply. So it's a bit of a carrot and stick based approach here. So the carrot is, become cleaner with your production methods, you will then have spare permits which you can then sell on, that will bring revenue into you, the firm. And the stick is, of course, well, if you don't do that and you use all your permits and you want to produce more, then you'll have to purchase these permits, and the price of these permits over time is going to go up, because as a result of international agreements we're going to reduce the supply of them, and as you know, anything that reduces in supply, the price of it tends to go up. Level 3. Level 3's analysis. Remember diagrams, and remember what Elizabeth Ring has said about diagrams. Use connectives and really do go into these diagrams to the absolute nth degree in your explanations. This is where you'll gather and accumulate all of your analysis marks. And just again, really, when it comes to the explanation of this, we're referencing the fact that this combines a market-based solution with regulation. Now if I can just flick into this diagram, here we have a diagram for tradable pollution permits. It's similar to the one which you'll find in the Susan Grant AS textbook. We've just taken it that one stage further with the supply curve shifting to the left. So price and quantity on our axes. We've got the supply here perfectly inelastic because the supply of the permits is fixed. And then we've got the supply curve shifting to the left, so 2016 it's here, 2017 it's here, and over time one would anticipate that it will continue to move further towards the origin. Here we've got the demand for 2016, and with the interaction of supply 2016 and demand 2016 we get the price of the permits, the carbon price basically, here at P1. Now over time, two things will happen. Number one, the supply curve will shift leftwards for reasons already explained. And over time, the demand, due to global growth and the fact that the global economy tends to grow, obviously it experiences peaks and troughs just like every domestic economy does, but the international economy over time the trajectory is upwards. And so as a consequence of that, the demand for permits over time will also go up. So I've shifted the demand curve for 2017 to the right. This then yields this price point P2 with the quantity Q2. This is the price point at which the supply for 2017 interacts with the demand for 2017. And you can see obviously that the key thing here is that the price of these permits is going up. And so as I've said, there's an incentive here. Number one, if you want to make some money for you as a firm, well, become cleaner, don't use all of your permits, and then you can sell them on. And secondly, it's in your own best interest as a firm to become cleaner, because you'll not have to purchase these permits in the first place. So you want to explain this diagram and really go into it in as much detail as you can. And then I can just resume this slideshow from the current slide now, level 4. Okay, I'll just flip this back. So once you've done that, that's your level 3 all done. Then you want to get into the level 4, which of course is your evaluation. This is where you get the 13 to 18 marks for those of you who are doing F581. So I've put a number of evaluative comments here. This is by no means a finite list, so do feel free to include more of your own should you see fit. So point number 1, it's better than a green tax because firms can sell something which previously cost nothing. Previously there was no market for quote-unquote fresh air, but a market's now been created, and so clever firms can exploit that by not using all their permits and selling them on to other firms who need more permits. Don't forget about the example of the EU's emissions trading scheme, which you can look up. What are some of the problems associated with this Tradeable pollution permit scheme? Well, how do you calculate and then distribute the permits to polluters? That is a very complex thing to have to do. The problems with the measurement, the problems with the distribution, the problems with the policing of it, the problems with the enforcement of it, all very complicated. How do you determine the market price? So, for example, and this is a very interesting point, during the global recession, the demand for these permits actually fell. And as a consequence of that, the global carbon price actually fell as well. And so that created, there were a couple of things there really. Number one, because the price of the permits was not as high as initially anticipated, then the incentive for firms to change their behaviour was very much reduced. And then secondly, as a consequence of that also, i.e. the fact that the carbon prices were lower, the demand for dirtier fuels actually increased. Paradoxically, the demand for dirtier fuels actually increased. And you could refer here then to the law of unintended consequences. If you wanted to illustrate that on that diagram, which we've just done for level 3, you could show that the demand for 2017 didn't shift as far to the right. It was only a very small shift, an insignificant shift. And so the significance of the price change was also rather insignificant. Another problem is that politicians are unlikely to set carbon prices high enough. Politically, it wouldn't be a particularly sensible thing to do. Obviously, to really drive out and to encourage a real shift in behaviour from firms, the penalty for pollution would have to be very significant. But whether or not politicians would have the political will to do that is another matter. Then there's the whole notion of, you get to the end of a year, some firms have been very, very careful and they have managed to save a lot of permits, but also unable to sell them on. Well, how do you reward those firms which are holding on to these permits at the end of the year, but yet haven't been able to sell them on? So they haven't been able to reap the financial gain from those sales. And then, as mentioned previously, we've got the whole notion of the policing and enforcement costs. So that's it, ladies and gentlemen. Just a fairly quick one on tradable pollution permits. Hope the revision's going well. It's not long to the exams now, and if you have any questions, do drop me a line, and I'll try my very best to get back to you.